Hi, it's Ray from Pro Shaper Workshop, and we're back on the Scout. We're going to do the step one here on this fender. This is the driver's side, left side fender, and we took this off yesterday in the first video. And here's the back view. And as I showed yesterday, it's amazingly in good shape in a lot of it here. The bottom is a little crusty. There's a little crack right here. This is evidence that after we got the fender off, we could see that that was one of the locking points for the bottom of the fender, and I believe there's probably a second one right here that's just missing, so we'll have to reconstruct that. New piece in here. Maybe weld that up and see how bad it is. Got to be de-rusted a little bit here. We have a little bit of denting in here, a little bit of denting over here. This all seems to be good. There's a crease dent that comes over to here. That'll come out. But this whole section, including the front, is really bad. So we're going to replace that. The mounting point on this nose of the fender, that's pretty rancid too. We'll have to de-rust it. It looks like this piece will definitely have. This is a reinforcer. This will get replaced from here up, and this edge, the upper mounting lip here, this is all gone. But if we're cutting it right here, we can actually save that back part. That's where I torched it and it kind of ruined it over here. But I'll piece in a piece over here. So when we make this new section, we'll tip the edge, and let's see, yeah, see the original flange goes down on this about, it's about 1.25 inches flange or so, and then it looks like this is a separate angle iron piece that they made. This is pretty thin sheet metal. I haven't measured it yet, but it might be 20 gauge. We'll probably make this out of 19 gauge if we patch it in, although we could use the 20 again too. So, but this piece we might make a little heavier. We'll make that out of 18 gauge. And that will get either spot welded or plug welded as a separate piece later on. So that's all we have to do with the fender. Now, how are we going to do that? That's the big question. Well, we don't have the information. Ideally, we don't have all the information that we need right here because it's corrupted right here. If this is all we had, we could take and smooth this a little bit with Bondo, and then we'd make a flexible shape pattern right here, and it would give us the information that we need. We might want to take this crease dent out because we're going to have to make profile gauges. But the nice thing is that, as I mentioned, we have another 66 Scout in the shop here that I purchased. So let's go take a look at that one. Alright, so here's the other 66 Scout. This one I got out of Connecticut. It did its duty as a snowplow also. But it's got some really good metal on it still. The doors were half-assed with these barn door hinges that were welded on, so it corrupted this fender, and we'll have to put a patch in here. And it looks like it was rotted on the bottom here, and it's got some aluminum flashing or something to make a new rocker. But the rest of it's pretty good. This is all intact, whereas the other fender on the other Scout is all rusted up and right at that point, and I believe the other side is rusted up too. This side, both sides are pretty good. So this car, both sides are pretty good. So I had Mark start this flexible shape pattern because we're capturing the information from this fender, and we're going to be making that patch panel. And what you want to do analysis of any surface is you need a straight edge. So here's a cheesy ruler, and I look down it, and yeah, it's pretty straight. And we put this ruler here, and we do have a little rock here. So that means it's a compound curve because we've got a radius value going this way, and of course we have a radius value going that way. That means the metal has to be stretched or shrunk. In this case, it would be all stretched because it's a very minor low crown. And we've got to capture that information. So I had Mark put this tape on here. This is a tape that is a low stick tape, and what this is acts as the release agent so that we can take this off. This is what's called a flexible shape pattern, and we found through the years, I came up with this idea of the flexible shape patterns over 20 years ago, and through the years I've been refining the process, and now I have a distinct way of doing it. And that's what you see is all this information. This information makes making that panel a lot easier. So if you were at home and you had the same situation where it's all rotted here, and you're trying to make the panel, there's a technique called marrying the panel. You make the panel and you kind of fit it over the old panel, and it's one thickness removed, and it's really not an accurate way of doing it. And then some people say, oh, I got to make a wooden buck. Well, then that means you have to take all these profiles off of here, convert them into wood, assemble this whole thing, and then you'll find that when you're fitting the panel to that wood buck, number one, there's so many spots that errors can creep in, and you make the wood buck for the left fender, but you also need it for the right fender. So that means you've got to make two bucks, or you've got to make it reversible, which adds another layer of complexity. So the wood buck thing I find just absolutely ridiculous, and it would be ridiculous to make a wire frame for this too, wire form. So you have a full surface, you take advantage of it. Now if you do have, like I said, a couple spots, you can fill those up with Bondo, and that gives you your full surface information. So Mark has put this low stick down, he's added all this information, and all this information is super relevant, and it's all about measuring this surface so you can make a very accurate reproduction of this surface. Not only this side, the left side, but it's reversible, so you can make both sides. Now you can do it any size you want. It just so happens that we only need this much of that fender to be repaired. We'll probably do the same thing down on the bottom over here for the other side, for that same fender. So what do we have here? We have gauges. These are profile gauges. This has profile values, or arrangement values, I call when you bend the metal to make that. So I have a system. This is a gauge. Gauges are all numbered. So it's number 5, and this is where it's indexed in. So number 5 is right here, and it's indexed right here. Well, how do you make these? You just take a pen and you go like that, and you cut it with a razor, and then you sand it in, and you get it nice and perfect fitting, and it ends here and it ends there, and an index is right there, and both the information is on both sides of the gauge. So let's see if number 5 gauge fits anywhere else. It fits perfectly there. It doesn't fit so well there. If you slide it up to there, it does. So this is a pretty common radius here, but it's best for accuracy to make a whole series of gauges. So we've got all the gauges going north-south, and then Mark made a couple of the gauges going east-west. So this is gauge number 3. There's the index mark right there, and that's where it goes right like that. So when the panel is done that we make, it has to fill up the flexible shape pattern, which is the area value, and this I call the arrangement value. And when we're making the panel, I'll go into a lot more detail about that. So all this information gets recorded on here. These are all the profile locations, and these eventually will get punched out so that you can mark it from both sides onto the panel, make it a left or a right, and you'll see that too. This little green square here is just a note to yourself that this is what this flexible shape pattern just happens to be. It's the Scout driver side fender top, and this we're calling this panel 1, so that's panel 1. And every one of these gauges will have that same number, panel 1, on there, and the little note about what this was relevant for. So the next step here is, and this information is all on this transfer tape, which is the mold release agent. It allows you to pull this off, but we're going to cover this first with this tape here, which is a fiberglass reinforced with fiberglass strands inside the tape, and that will probably just come down straight like this, and this has to be overlapped. These are not overlapped because the first one of these flexible shape patterns that I made when I came up with the idea, I made them overlap, and then when you turn it inside out, the two low sticks, they don't stick together so well when they're just stuck to themselves, so it's just kind of all flapping in the breeze. So we make sure that we don't overlap. If it does overlap, we cut the little overlaps out, and it makes a much better flexible shape pattern. This one has to be overlapped. This is what welds it all together. And it also seals in, hermetically seals in all this information, so when you're working with the flexible shape pattern, the acid on your fingers won't remove all this information. So it's pretty good for quite a while. So once we make this flexible shape pattern with the gauges, we have the information to make this panel over and over and over again. Now we also have another tape, and this is the 1/8 inch flexible vinyl flexible tape, and this is vinyl, so you can really make some nice curves with it like this. In this case here, we're just doing a straight line over here. So that is the area that we're actually going to replace. We use this vinyl tape also for cutting anytime we're going to generate a really accurate line, and it allows you to see it really, really well. If you do a scratch-all or a magic marker line, it's easy to not see it as well when you cut it. But this here, you burnish this down so it doesn't migrate at all, and you use the shear on it. And generally what I do is I go, if I'm cutting, I'll cut about a 1/16 or a few thousandths more extra so that it's not right on the line, and then I'll grind it right to the line. So it's super precision. And that's what you got to do as far as cutting and fitting these things in. So now, how do we know where we are going? If we make this panel, how do we know where to cut the other panel? We'll show that in the next video when we have this all off. This comes unstuck from the Fender, and because right here is rusted up on the other Fender, we won't be able to index it like we can like this. So what Mark did was, we have this point and we measured over 16 inches. And Mark, where's the line? Okay, he's got a line over here. It should come all the way down. So we'll bring that line down. And then also, where these bolts are, these attachment bolts, right where the center is, we've got this mark here. So that's where all the attachment bolts are going to be. So when we punch those holes, or make those holes, we want to know that those are in the right spot. So we've got quite a bit of information on here, and it's all done with just simple tape. Like I said, I've been doing these, I came up with the idea over 20 years ago, made literally thousands and thousands of panels using this system, and I taught my classes. And I tried all the different tapes, and I find that the tapes I have now work the best. The 1-inch format tape works really good. And we do sell this tape kit in our website, proshaper.com. It comes with all three different types of tape that you use to do these. So the next step will be, Mark will cover this, and tomorrow we'll pull this flexible shape pattern off. We'll show you that, and then we'll start making the sheet metal piece. We'll measure the sheet metal, find out what the accurate thickness is, and we'll make the replacement panel out of the same thickness. We'll vary maybe on, like I said, on this attachment ledge. That might be 19 gauge, it might be 20 gauge. We're going to find that out, but we'll probably make that out of 18 gauge to give it a little more strength. So next I want to show you is, we took the fender off, and we're dressing the first step of fixing that fender, but we also took the hood off of the other 66. So let's go take a look at the hood. Alright, so here's the hood to the Scout, which we took off in that first video, and we'll lift up the hood in a little minute. Well, they'll do it right now. we'll lift the hood up and you can see what the underneath of that hood looks like. I don't know if we got that in the video yesterday, but you can see it's in really good shape. A lot of times these hoods right here with the reinforcement, this could be all rotted out and everything, could be really bad. Back here could be bad, but this one doesn't show. It's all the original paint. It's a nice turquoise color. It's just missing the little heat blanket, and you know, I don't know if we'll be putting that back in or some substitute for it or whatever. But the top surface has got this really heavy rust patina on it, and this little section here, I think it was yesterday or the day before, I just blobbed it on. Essentially, I'll put a little bit on here, like this. So blob it on, little 1-inch brush, and you leave it really thick like this. That's the best. Mark put a little spot on here earlier. Like I said, I think I did this a couple days ago maybe. And what happens is overnight it'll turn into this real black stuff here. It basically ossifies, which means turn into stone, and that's what you end up with, and it just takes a few minutes to scrape it off. So it's like literally a minute to put the material on and a minute to scrape it off after. And I usually would throw that away, but I saved it for this video. And then that didn't get it right down to the bone. That left a little bit of residue, and Mark has done this, I don't know, a couple hours ago, so see, it didn't bite into it yet. It'll do it in stages. And generally it won't take the paint off, but this paint is so tentative, it's actually pulling the paint too. Now this is just a phosphoric acid. It's not that caustic at all. You don't want to get it in your eyes or anything, but it doesn't hurt if you get it on your hands, unless you have a cut or something. So this, when we put the initial one on, the result is something like that. But in my case, on this side, I let it turn to the black, swept the black over here, took a minute, put another dose on, similar to that, and let that set for 3 or 4 hours, and I scraped it. It was still in the pink form, and I just kind of blobbed it over here, put another dose on it, and later scraped that and let it blob over here, and it just kind of ran down over here. So I think I put 3 doses total on that, and on the last dose I used just standard steel wool and rubbed it good with the steel wool. What this does though is it actually goes into the pores of the metal. This metal is granular and has pores. So that's the finish you get with the steel wool. But now if you rub this with the Scotch-Brite, you'll see that beautiful steel color start to reveal itself, and there's no rust whatsoever. It's just like it came out of the rolling mill, you know, back in 1966. Now, if you have any little spots that didn't get 100%, you just daub them on and get that little spot. Now, this will leave a little bit of protection too, so it won't rust up really heavy. But now, all you're going to do is get a little humidity rust, which comes off with the that other phosphoric acid that we get from Home Depot. We'll show a picture of that. This was navel jelly. I get this from McMastercard.com. Here's the other liquid phosphoric acid. I think this is a little weaker than the navel jelly. And this we get from Home Depot. I think it's $18 for a gallon. We put it in a little spritzer. And this we will use to clean up the metal. After we get this all like this, and maybe it's a humid day or whatever, or somebody puts a water bottle on here and it makes a big rust ring, you just spritz that on and boom, you're back to clean. In fact, this will actually clean this up a little bit more. Before we do that, let's see what happened here. This is where the residue, and it's turned into that black ossified mess. So we just scrape that off, and even that essentially used navel jelly still had enough kick left in it. As you can see, it cleans off this beautiful spot. You can see that's not hard to do. Only take a minute or so to do it. And we'll put another dose of the navel jelly on here, and that will look just like that. And we'll do a little bit at a time. It's all passive. You put it on a minute, let it sit for 3-4 hours or whatever. You come back and you scrape it like that. So in the next week or so, maybe this will be all cleaned up. We'll use paint remover, and this will be all back to 1966. And then it will reveal some of the damage. There's probably some micro denting here and there. We might have to fix that denting. And international badge has seen better days, so we're going to have to find a source for a new international badge. I don't know if that was cloisonné or whatever, but it'd be nice to have a nice cloisonné badge there. This is another nice feature of doing these scouts, is it has these ribs in here, and these are put in intentionally just to make it stronger. But it's a styling feature also. It gives it the character. But I'm looking at it and I go, boy, that'd be nice to put a stainless little piece in there. You know, but that's something you could try. You could put a little stainless piece in there, and it would make a protector so that if you threw something on the hood or whatever, it wouldn't scratch your paint up. So I don't know. I'll try that later on. It's one of the things, you have the freedom to customize it in any way, and nobody's going to say it's not original or whatever. So let me get a spritzer here and we'll spritz this up. So we'll put some of this clean strip that we get from Home Depot on here. I guess that's not going to work. The sprayer didn't work, so we're just going to drip a little on here. And we'll work this in with some Scotch-Brite. So all that years of rust staining is now going away. I'm going to clean this up. And we're back to really nice looking metal. Alright, so we're going to keep working on this hood. We'll get it all de-rusted. We're going to go back to that fender. We're going to take the flexible shape pattern off the next video and show you how we make that panel. And then later on we'll be welding that in and show you why the flexible shape pattern will actually help you position where it needs to go. So I hope you enjoyed this, and we're going to continue on with this series. It's Ray from Pro Shaper Workshop. Metal is clay.